Welcome back to the GitHub training, open training hosted here at NCAT by the Aggie Makerspace, produced by Aggie Robotics in conjunction with GitHub Education. So this is Module 1 of our GitHub training. It's an introduction to the concepts of source control. So we're not going to get too deep into practically using Git and GitHub just yet. There's some terminology that has to be cleared up before we can have real discussion about this stuff, and that's what we're going to cover real quick here in this module. So what is source control? Because Git is a version of source control. Source control is a broader topic that includes several other tools like SVN and others that tracks changes over time. It manages releases. So version, you'll see on your apps version 1.0, version 2.3, version 8.6.1, and so on and so forth. Version control makes it pretty simple or source control, version control. Those two terms are kind of interchangeable. Makes it pretty easy to manage these releases. It includes a master copy, the golden master, so to speak, shipping code that's ready for customers to use and interact with, code that's complete, code that's been checked, code that's verified good. However, your repository refers to your master copy. That includes one of those, and it also has working copies, things that people can work on as they go through. That can be either branches or forks or one of several other paradigms, and we'll discuss those a little bit later on. So Git, like I said, is one of several types of source control or version control. It's the one that we'll be using here in this class. It's very popular, very widely adopted, one of the most well-known version control tools out there, source control tools out there. It's distributed source control, which means that every computer or server that has a copy of this code has a full copy. So that adds a lot of redundancy and removes a lot of potential for error, and gets able to transfer all of that data because it tracks sets of changes. Rather than necessarily tracking every version of every file, it tracks a set of changes for that file. So it makes what could potentially be a huge number of files much smaller than it would be otherwise. And Git holds code in a repository. So if you hear me referring to a Git repo, a Git repository, a GitHub repository, what have you, that is a container, a directory or a folder on your computer. That's all it is. It's just a folder that contains a project. And the only other thing is that folder must also contain a .git file, which is far out of the scope of this module. But that's what makes it a Git repository instead of just a normal folder. So I mentioned branching previously. Branching is the way that we are going to separate work in this series. It's a separate set of changes over time, so you can have multiple branches as you perform multiple tasks, and generally one branch holds one specific task that you're trying to complete. So you'll have maybe a task to add a feature, a task to fix a bug, and you'll make branches for each of these to keep your changes separate from each other so you can worry about one thing at a time. And let's kind of look at how that will work in this example software project. So we have our master branch here. Our master branch has several commits. And remember, a commit is just a set of changes in Git. So add some text, add a new class, add a method, what have you. All those are contained in these little circles, which represents commit. And this is a pretty common graphing model across a lot of Git tools. So this is a very standard graphing model, and hopefully you'll get used to this. So we have these 4 commits that you can see on our master branch, and maybe it's time to work on a new feature. We want to integrate Bluetooth in our app. So our branch comes down. You can see this yellow is a new branch. Notice it starts after the last commit on blue. So yellow contains all of those changes to the left on the master branch, which is cool. And now we're going to add a change, maybe do a few more changes, and fix that one last bug before we're done. Great. So we have these 5 commits that are all part of our feature Bluetooth integration branch. Notice there's no spaces in branch names. That's super important. No spaces in branch names. And now we're ready for this code to go into our master branch. It's all done. We're real proud of it. It looks nice. We do what's called a pull request. And essentially, once this pull request is merged, we have all of those yellow changes up on our master branch. Now, while we were working on this task, another developer started a bug fix. There was something going wrong with our animation, and this developer decided to go ahead and tackle that for us with these 3 green commits. Well, this developer is aware that there are changes on master that he does not have. Okay, all these yellow changes were added after the green branch started. So we can simply merge master into our bug fix branch, and we can get a green branch that has all of those changes. Now we can make sure that our changes work with the most recent version of the code. That's really important, because if you're not checking against the most recent version, it's possible that when you merge, you could be introducing bugs that you didn't otherwise see. So now that we have the most up-to-date version of our master branch, we can go ahead and open another pull request. And just like last time, when our pull request is merged, those changes are added to our project. And that's kind of how the branching model works moving forward. Okay? And we will get practical experience with all of these concepts. So as long as you understand right now what the branching model looks like from this graph's standpoint, we'll worry about how it's actually implemented, how it's actually carried out a little bit later on in this training. So let's go a little bit more in depth on pull requests. Pull requests exist because no code should end up in your master branch without being reviewed. This ensures that your team puts out the best possible code. Okay, everyone works together, and looks at the pull request and makes sure that 1, this is up to the standards of quality for our team. There's no obvious errors, and this is basically ready to go, that we're all proud of it, we're happy to put it in our product, and we're ready to merge. It also gives a great context for discussion. So let's look at a real pull request. So this is actually the pull request I've submitted to merge this module. And so here is the text from the README for this module, and you can see right now there's no conversation, just all the commits that I've made. And we can look at all the files changed, just one file changed, and all the green highlights are things that were added. If I'd taken anything away, it would be highlighted in red. And you can see how I can do some what's called a review, and I can say, hey, I like this line, and start my review. And I could say, you're missing the link to the YouTube video, which is of course because I'm recording it right now, but that's something that we want to make sure gets fixed before this gets added. So I can add that review comment, and let's say everything else looks good. So since this is my pull request, I can't approve or request changes, I can only comment. So I can say looks great, but please address my comment. And I can submit that review. So now, this is where that context comes into play. Where we're having this conversation, it's linked to exactly the line that I'm talking about. And what that does is it makes all your discussion about your code much faster, because you don't have to establish context first. You don't have to say, hey, in this class on this line when you were doing this method, you can just put your comment right where it belongs. And this is a really great tool. And then once, of course, we're happy with this, we can merge the pull request. So your exercise for this module is to submit a pull request to this organization. In Module 0, you should have gotten added to the Aggie Makerspace organization. And in this module, Module 1, we will go ahead and add your first submission to this open training system. So here is how we will do that. From the GitHub training repository, you will create a new file. And according to the instructions, this should be in submissions / your username. And I'll just put username for now. And notice that I am navigating to these directories with each slash. As long as you spell these directories correctly, this won't be a problem. Also, if these directories don't exist yet, like you don't yet have a username directory in submissions, it will create them for you automatically. We are told that our file should be called about.md. Now, MD is an extension that means Markdown. Markdown is a great tool that allows us to quickly format text in line with just some simple characters, and it's automatically rendered by GitHub, which is super nice. So we could say, this is a heading. This is a subheading. And here we have text. So let's preview that. So this is kind of Markdown at work, which is pretty cool. You can read more about Markdown. GitHub has a great guide on it that you can find, and is linked in the README for this directory, so you can check that. But basically, you should tell us a bit about yourself in this about.md. We want to know stuff like, who are you? What's your major and what do you do on campus? What do you do outside of school? What are your hobbies and passions? What do you have experience in? And what can others ask you about for assistance? This can be a long-form introduction to yourself, as much as you'd like, as much or as little as you'd like to share, that basically introduces yourself to this Makerspace community so that we can get to know you before we all move forward in training. So once you've done that, you can add a commit message. Now, notice, this is a commit that we're making right on the web interface. GitHub allows you to make commits right from the web interface without actually downloading anything to your computer. So we want to create our about.md and create a new branch for this. And we can do, let's do ccanon94, that's my GitHub username, about, and propose new file. That will let all of us know to take a look, approve your pull request, and welcome you to the community. And I definitely look forward to reviewing all these requests. It's going to be awesome. That's it for this module 1 of your introduction to source control. Hope y'all got a good grasp of the topic and look forward to seeing you in our next module.